The wiring of the CD30. While the faceplate says you can use 110, 120 volts, you'll get half of the results you want, so I would not ever use that under any circumstances. When you bring 208 to 240 in, wire this up so that your first hot leg comes into terminal 35, your second hot leg comes into terminal 36, and your ground comes into 38. That is if you're using a local disconnect. If you're not using the local disconnect, bring your first hot into 31, your second hot into 32, and your ground into 38. For outgoing power, there's a clip down here. Your first hot leg comes into 41, your second hot leg goes into 42, and the ground goes into 43. Wiring the sensor, that will be right here. The black cable comes to terminal 1, the red on terminal 3, the white on terminal 12, and the green on terminal 16. For navigation, we have a series of buttons: the on-off, the up-down, and the forward-back. You'll use these to navigate the menus, which will be numbered, and the parameters within those. To get to the menu, hit the forward button, and you'll have a C with some numbers. From here, you can go up to, say, C40, which is a commonly used menu, and C38, which is another commonly used menu. The first one I will talk about is the C38. Once you're at this level, hit the forward button. The small I shows the actual current being drawn. The capital I shows the current limit, that's 0 to 100. The A is the amplitude set point, 0 to 100. And I'll take that up to 100 for now. The P is the maximum limit. This is 5% to 100%, and typically you'll find this somewhere around 20 to 35 depending on the conveyor. If it's outside those limits, if it's below 20 or above 35, there might be something to be concerned about. F is the vibrating frequency, the frequency at which the conveyor will be vibrating. This can be manually adjusted under very specific circumstances, but is not typically recommended. The ESP is the external set point. If you have it at 0, then you will be doing your set point from this controller. If you change it to a 1, you have the ability to use the 4 to 20. Once you're at the 4 to 20, if you have it set to 1, you're using 4 to 20. If you have it set to 0, you're using 0 to 10 volts. So I'm going to back out and change the ESP back to 0 for the remainder of this course. The 2 is the second set point, 0 to 100%. The ACC is if it's on a 1, that means we are using the sensor. Again, under almost every circumstance, I would recommend this. The PA is the proportional characteristic. The IA is the integral characteristic. AFC means that we're using automatic frequency control. If it's a 1, the automatic frequency search is on, and we can find the natural frequency of the conveyor. And we'll do that using the AFS, which we will approach in a different section. Now I'm going to back out to C40. Well, I'm at C38, up arrow, up arrow. Now I'm at C40. The C40 is the service menu. SIF 0 means the interface is off. I is the actual current. Some of these are very similar to the C38 menu. Capital I is the current limit, 0 to 100%. L and H are the frequency limits. So L is the lower frequency limit of 15 hertz in this case, or 30 hertz in this case for high. And you can narrow that band down if you know the frequency that your conveyor should be working at. F is the frequency that the controller finds on its own. AS is the AFC threshold. This is a soft start and a soft stop, basically in seconds. This is how long it takes to ramp up and ramp down. -EN is the invert enable. This allows local control with no PLC run command. EFU is the current regulation. 0 equals off. PI is a proportional characteristic for current regulation. II is the integral characteristic for current regulation. RB is the relay status. That's a 0 or 1. For PPM conveyors, you'll want to set this SPE to 0, and you'll want to set the APS to 1. If you have a right conveyor, you will set those opposite. Now we're going to talk about the automatic frequency search. I want to back out until I find C40. Go down to C38. And I want to set my I at 100. Take my A down to 0. I want to set my P at 10. Now if this is being run by a PLC, go to the C40 menu and set your -EN to 1. But since we're not doing that, I'm not going to make that change. Now in the C38 menu, I will continue stepping down until I find the AFS. Then I will hit the on button and the up arrow. At this point, you're going to see numbers cycling through between the 15 and 30. You'll notice that the pan is vibrating a little bit, and there are bars, 3 bars, which will be flashing. When you see 3 bars pretty steady, that means that it has almost found its frequency. Once it does, it will go to 0, and it might show you off and then LOPO. In this case, it didn't. After we've done the automatic frequency search, we'll want to go to the C38 menu. And let's turn the conveyor on. Now let's go to the I, which is 100. We'll bring the A up to 100. At this point, you'll notice that it starts vibrating a bit more. And then we'll take our P up. At this point, we'll bring up the P value while watching the stroke sticker on the side of the conveyor. There's a design stroke, which is typically a 1/4 inch, more or less. And that's where you'll want to drive this P up until that stroke sticker shows that 1/4 inch. There are a few other parameters I need to address. If you're using a black proximity sensor, go to C51. You will want to adjust this manually on the sensor until the reading is 25.0. The next menu is C210. If you go through all your settings and things still aren't working, sometimes you want to restore the factory settings. C210 will do that. If you want to save your settings afterward, go to C143. And this is where you'll save your settings. After you've done the factory reset, to unhide your C38 menu functions, go to C117. If you set it to 0, you will unhide your function menus.